I will begin as always with the official hello. And how about this time? An official hug. For all my good trading friends out there, and even for you guys, I'm not quite sure if you like me yet or not. Welcome to another edition of Stock Market Mutterings with Trade with Doug. As always, this is where I'll do my best to take a grope in the murkiness. I will try to make some sense out of the stock market for you, and I do hope that whatever we talk about today puts a little bit of money in your pocket. Now, as always, if you guys need help with your trading, you know where to find me. Somewhere on this screen or somewhere down in the description box will be a link. I know sometimes I can be silly, but I take money very seriously. And I challenge you to click that link and trade with me live each day and see how we go about trading a market. Bull markets, bear markets, sideways markets, good markets, bad markets, ugly markets, choppy markets, crazy markets, whatever it is, every day for thousands of days now, it seems, since the 1999. So I've seen a few things, and I'm here to share those with you. Now, this is the first watch list for the month, or the first mutterings for the month of March. So I hope your February was good. If not, we have some challenges I think we need to face. No, not challenges. That's a bad word. We have some things that we really need to look at. I think we're beginning this month of March at a reckoning spot, especially in the QQQ. Now, we know that some of the indices have pulled back, especially the Qs. And if we look at it, where it ended up Friday is right at a very vital area going forward. And I think we're going to discover some price areas early on Monday that will set the tone for how the rest of the week looks. I'm going to expand this chart here. This is a daily. And the area I'm looking at right here is this 310 spot. You challenged that area a few times back here in January. You got here the last three trading sessions, or very close to the last three trading sessions of the week. So this area now has been tested 5 times. I mean, that's a pretty solid level going forward. Either this market will solidify that, in my opinion. This market can do whatever it wants. If it wants to play, the Joker, it can do that because it does sometimes. But all we can do is analyze stuff and go from there. So here's 2 scenarios. Let's say 3 scenarios. 3 scenarios that you may see here. If you're looking at the bull side, what you want is this thing to come in here, tighten up in this area, and then begin to trade back up and work its way towards the all-time high area. Like we've seen so many times before in these types of moves here, where you pull back, you bounce up. Where we're sitting right now, I think, is about a 7% correction. That's not the deepest correction in the world, but it's not bad. I mean, we haven't really seen bigger corrections in markets really since October, so that's not a bad look there. So you're either going to get that move here where you tighten up, or you get a bounce. Maybe a second thing happens is a short-term bounce to begin the week, followed by a retest of some lower prices a little bit later, where this is a failed breakout. So I'm expecting 2 ways that this thing is going to trade, or maybe even 3. The first trade is that it defends this very early, even maybe in Sunday night futures, and it begins to make a break up towards the high. Now, whether this goes back to the all-time highs, like I just said, or it becomes just a short bounce and then followed by a longer correction, that remains to be seen. But the first order of business is you hold this level and bounce off of it. The second is you may see a gap below that if it begins the market. If that's the case, I would feel that the very first step, let's say we wake up to a gap down somewhere in this neighborhood, I would think your very next step would be a move to the upside, even if it's just a short-term panic rally or a panic bounce on short-term oversold conditions. The third scenario in here would be a very, very brief, small, early morning bounce followed by new lows. Now, this third scenario doing that, I think, would be the most violent and the most aggressive out of those 3. If it's just a very short-lived bounce that immediately makes lows on Monday, we could see some aggressive selling. But again, my crystal ball don't work as well as yours either. We're all just sitting here just drawing up some lines. What matters is how you do it when you're under the pressure. How do you perform when the pressure is on? We'll figure that out. So just watch those. I think the other indices look okay. They have it, like the Dow was made an all-time high, I think Wednesday. It sold off a little bit. IWM's pulled back a little bit. SPY has pulled back a little bit. But I think when you look at it, the Q sector is definitely taking the hit. Also, those Q stocks, the Facebooks, the Apples, those are the ones that really, really took some hits. Plus, there's dozens of others underneath of that. Much of those high flyer movers like the SQs and stuff like that really took a beating, and maybe they're reaching some spots that we need to look at. Well, one of those stocks that I do want to look at, I mean, there's a lot of, that look like this, but I'm going to be very selective. Now, I should say that normally when we go through any type of corrective market, if it gets 7-10% like you're seeing on the Qs, I'd rather just buy the Qs either straight out in the ETF or the futures. And I'd rather do this because I feel that the market is what bounces first. You can always take the risk by, I hope I'm making sense here. You can always buy an individual stock, but many of them do get left behind or they lag behind. So maybe you buy a Tesla on the dip and it just rips. Or maybe you buy Apple and it just sits there for days before it rips. But the Qs themselves will always go if they bounce. Okay, I hope that made some sense. So once we start getting into corrective territory or high volatile situations, I tend to migrate from individual names and move over to the indices. Is it a formula for success? Hell, for me it is, but maybe not for you. I'm just letting you know what I'm doing. These here are not that much. Let's get to the stock I was talking about for the sake of me just continuing to ramble on. Zillow. I want to take a look at this Zillow. A couple of months ago, I wanted to get some of this Zillow, but I ended up with RDFN because it had a much better chart pattern. I think I brought that. It was a good trade. These mortgage sector trades are really good. I think you're seeing a bull market there that will continue as long as interest rates are lower. And I think these things have bounce capabilities. This went on a major tear. It's got the classic A-frame. So I'm looking for the same kind of setup here. You tighten up roughly in this area. You bounce off of this near-term support and start to trend upwards. Now, I would like to see it down here in a more viable area of support, but the market doesn't always give you exactly what it is that you are looking for. So anyway, keep your eyes on this Zillow. I like the way this one looks. Now, another one that I may want to take a look at here that I've been in and out of, and I'll say I've had great success with, and I've had poo-poo success with, because sometimes this thing just is confusing, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but this Planter, PLTR, it's, when you get into these support levels, here's what I'll say about it. I'm not sure that this thing has the strength to make it back up here right now. That's questionable to me, but I'm not really worried about that, because I'm only worried about how do I begin and where do I end? Because sometimes you get into these trades, and look guys, it's like this, right? You can take 10 of the same trading setups with 10 different results. They will all act differently all 10 times. We never really know the outcome. We see a setup, we react, we control risk. I mean, that's really a trader's job right there. The rest is managing. Sometimes you get a full bounce all the way back up to highs, and other times you just get cheese. You get nothing at all. It's just a cheesy old bounce, and sometimes you have to scratch those trades or scrape out of them. That's fine. That's all part of being a trader. That's just how this thing works, you know, and you get in there, you have a couple of small losers, you got a couple of scrap trades, and then you step into a nice one. I mean, that's the science of trading. It's no more complicated than that. Here's what I know about Planter, regardless of what anybody else wants to say about it, love it, hate it, whatever. Every time it gets down into this little support area, there is some sort of thrusting action. There is this tendency for this thing to want to perform well or bounce or defend its levels. You got a really big bounce here, and you got one the other day. I actually entered it here, but then it just turned into, this is what I'm talking about, cheese. Market started to get weak. This thing started to turn around, and I'm like, nah. Now you're back here again. You got a tiny defense of this level here on Friday. Just watch this. I mean, this is what I like about this one right here. It's either a yes or a no, just like the Qs. When you're at that level and you're that close to a very important support level where an asset has bounced off several times, then you have your questions answered. It's either yes or no. It either bounces off of there again and you have a trade to the upside, or it goes lower and maybe you decide to short, but it's cut and dry. The risk and reward is right there. Now, if it does bounce, I don't know if we're going to see anything up here, but I'm willing to take a look at this early. My horizon right now, until I get a couple of different viewpoints from the market, is much shorter. So maybe this would be something that would turn into a day trade. If it had a really strong performance and a strong close, then I might be willing to keep some overnight after that. So just keep that one on the list. And I'm going to throw one in here last. I mean, there's a lot of good stocks that look like this. I talked before about Peloton, which is a stock I love, but right now I kind of feel a little bit dumb. I'm feeling the dumb ski, because this thing has dropped down in here. I mean, it's at a pretty good support level, but These are just ones I'm looking at. I imagine if you go through your watch list, you're going to find a lot of stocks that look just like this with massive pullbacks. Many of these are traded in the Qs. They're going to emulate what we saw in the Qs. Strong, heavy percentage point retracements. I mean, this thing is down from $170 all the way down here into the 120s. Some of these have some good value. The same way with an SQ. You have a pretty good pullback on this. Really, that we've got a lot of these, I should say, these A-frames where these stocks has broken out and then just came down here, the old standard A-frame chart, up and then straight down. And I think as we begin the week, there's quite a bit of them. So if you're looking at your watch list, or what I'm trying to say is go through there and look at these A-frame types of setups. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of them. A lot of these things move in unison. That's why I like to trade the indices sometimes straight out. But take a really close look at that, because you're either going to get a bounce out of those levels or you're not. And if you're going to long that, at least you're going to know early on and right away whether you're wrong on this trade, and you won't have to just get cheesed on the way down, right? You don't want to, nobody wants any top cheese here, just mid-level cheese. So I like that one. I think one last I want to look is Cuervo, QRVO. I've liked this stock for a long time. With all due respect to the world, I mean, I got to say, look how well this thing is holding up in this area right here. Still consolidating very well, showing relative strength against the market. To me, it looks like, regardless of what the market does, unless it gets really, really ugly, this thing wants to kind of remount here and move to 200. So just kind of look at that. So here's what I want to do just real quickly before we sign off is this. Let's just give the straight trade plan for tomorrow. I think your first order of business is watching these Qs. Maybe even watch them Sunday afternoon and see how they open up and see how the interest. One thing that you guys learn with technical analysis is the closer you get to major support levels or major resistance levels, you can also monitor the activity there. You will either see a flush of volume, a rush, I should say, not a flush, a rush of volume come into the Qs down there, a valid defense. So kind of say you're measuring on a scale of 1 to 10. If the Qs open up down there, what would you say on a scale of 1 to 10 looks like market enthusiasm? Does it look like people are stepping in with both hands to buy and buy aggressively like they did after coronavirus correction, after some of these other corrections? Or are they iffy, okay? You can tell by looking at the chart. It will tell you. You can tell by looking at the volume. By doing this, we'll secure the validity of the level that you're looking at and give you the confidence as a trader to put your money down on the table, or at least give you the clues as to what you need. So watch those Qs early. Watch Zillow. I like the way this chart looks. I think it's good for a reversal. I think Planter, PLTR, could be good for a reversal. It is a highly shorted stock, so there's some squeeze potential. But I think risk versus reward is very attractive here, if nothing else, for a day trade, or maybe even a 1 to 2 day trade. And I also think Cuervo here is one to take a look at because it has good relative strength against the market. The rest, we're just going to have to see how it plays out. So I want to thank you guys for watching this Market Mutterings. As always, if you need help or have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me. I don't care who you are or what you got on your mind. Always feel free. You don't have to be a member of my community to ask me anything. I will be glad to help each and every one of you with whatever I can. Until next week, guys, I want you to trade well, and I want you to do the best that you can. As always, take care.